Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. We are in season 2, which is all about hiring, and I am joined by my co-host, Annelle Barnett with Marketing Mob.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is going to be an amazing episode. Before we get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this great podcasting room. The topic of today is SLAs in HR. I know that's a lot of acronyms,
Right.
but we're going to go with it. So real quick, I was reading an article the other day, and there was a person positioning, I don't recall who it was exactly, but they were talking about service level agreements, SLAs, in HR and human resources for acquiring talent. And what it was really about was, in a sales environment, when you get a lead, you have times in which you have a timing mechanism where it says, look, you got to follow up with this lead within a certain amount of time.
Right.
And getting to them very quickly is important. And what they were advocating in this article was they see a future in which you have the same rules for HR. When a new candidate comes in, they got to follow up extremely quickly. And not only that, but it's actually going to be monitored and as an HR metric. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's see. I would love for HR teams to have SLAs, and in fact, I'm integrating something similar into my organization, where it's it's about commitments and what I commit to and what they commit to, and the time frame that they commit to getting back to me. So I definitely think it's a great idea. With how fast talent goes these days, it's you miss out on really good talent because of timing issues.
Yeah, I know we did another podcast in season 1 that was all about the fact that people are voluntarily leaving roles in record numbers right now because there's such a fight for talent. So, and I work with other clients that say, we can't get to them fast enough. No matter how fast we go, some people say they've accepted other jobs. So we've come up with some tactics for a lot of our clients to be able to manage that and set expectations in order to get the right people.
Right.
But I could see how in your space, success is driven by the responsiveness of the HR team.
Without question. And in some cases, the companies are small enough that it's actually the organization owner or founder that we're working with. So talent, especially in marketing, I'm not sure if it's the same in other industries, but specifically in marketing, talent goes very quickly. I've had situations where people have been hired away within 2 hours of interviewing them for a position. So if a company is taking weeks or even a week to get back to you on feedback of whether this person is qualified for an interview or not, the likelihood that they're going to still be available is pretty slim.
Extremely low.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Well, I know it's definitely going over into other industries because we have companies, like we work with a company in the logistics space.
Uh-huh.
And apparently there's a massive shortage of truckers, people to drive the truck. And they're paying great amounts for something where, a lot of those people have, they stopped at high school. They got a diploma, but they're making amazing money, and the shortage is helping that. I know we've always seen it in developers and in the consulting space that we were in, and like PHP developers and all kinds of other dev resources. So it sounds like it's a trend across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it is. I mean, the economy is extremely strong. So there's definitely, the unemployment rate's the lowest it's been in, 10 years or so?
A long while.
A long time. So, I definitely see this trend continuing for a while, for sure. So.
Yeah, I would say most of the items that I've read about it say that it is going to continue, even if there's any kind of market correction. There's just so many new jobs that are requiring new types of skill sets that it's creating other shortages. And I know on our previous podcast we mentioned AI and other things, and I don't normally apply to the thought that you're losing jobs because, yes, you're losing certain types of jobs, but that's creating other jobs.
Right.
But I could see, with AI and machine learning and a lot of the things that I'm seeing that are automated now, I think the future could hold some, talent struggles for us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of organizations, as business owners, we're often trained to hire slow and fire fast. And in theory, that is great. And it's actually, as a business owner myself, it definitely makes sense. And I respect that for sure and understand why that is there. But the reality is if you take too long to hire, then you'll miss out on the best candidates because the best candidates are the ones that are going to get scooped up the fastest. So I think it's really key for companies to have processes in place so that they can still accomplish hiring slow and doing their due diligence and making sure that the candidate does actually fit the position, but they can do it in a fast way. They can flow candidates through more quickly than taking 5 days to think about it. So, I think a lot of times, everyone that's hiring has a real job also. And so they interview 5 candidates on one day, for instance, and then they don't, they have to go back to their real job, and they sometimes neglect actually providing the feedback that's needed and making the decisions that are needed in order to keep the process rolling.
Yeah, we definitely see that when we're working with clients because oftentimes we're adding a few vetting steps to make sure they're getting a really good candidate and that they're matching and that they're going to stay for a long time.
Right.
And that seems counter because they're like, okay, well, now it's going to take longer. And really it's, well, we're going to add steps, but we're going to shorten the cycle.
Right.
So we have to make these other changes in order to automate or shorten the time between start and end of the process.
Right.
And that's a big piece of making sure you're not only getting the right candidate in a very expedient manner before they get snapped away, but also doing the proper amount of vetting so that you have the right person for the culture, skill set, personality, and all of those other factors.
Right. Yeah. And the hiring manager has to be committed to the process. So if you're looking for quality talent, then you need to, make your effort to find them. Another thing as well is candidates get really excited about positions, and they like the forward motion, they like the progress. So even if you aren't ready to make a decision yet, if you can communicate with them, if you continue the communication pattern so that they get a little feedback and a little energy about the position, then you can keep their enthusiasm going without losing them. Because, frankly, they lose their momentum. They lose their enthusiasm if you take too long. And it's hard to bring them back around and to get them energetic and excited about a position again.
Yeah, definitely. I could see how, you could get them engaged, make sure that they are going to be ready for the role. And then if you need to make a decision or you need certain time for certain steps to happen because somebody that needs to interview them that's crucial is out of the office,
right,
then continue with the communication, maybe the video communication, as we mentioned in a previous podcast,
right,
or what other strategies are there. So I guess that brings up the question, what other strategies, if I have an interview process that just is a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more diligent, what are some of the messages I want to be sending them in between each one of those steps to keep them engaged?
Really just giving them status updates as much as anything. They just don't like the black hole. They don't like to not know what's going on. And a lot of them are perfectly satisfied with just having some sort of update rather than silence. So, frankly, I think that's probably the number one thing to keep them engaged for sure.
Yeah, well, hopefully, bringing this concept of HR SLAs to the forefront and starting to communicate that that's going to have to happen in organizations will get a little bit of momentum behind the response rates and the communication and other things that are involved in hiring.
Right. I like to think of candidate sourcing or finding candidates, recruiting candidates, whatever your method of attracting these candidates, and attracting employees, I like to think of it the same way that you would think of it as finding customers and treating them the same way that you would treat your customers. I mean, these are the people that are going to be talking to your customers. These are the people that will be servicing your customers. And, if a customer needed a proposal from you, there is absolutely no way that you would take 2 weeks to get it to them. So if you treat the candidates the same way that you treat your customers, then you're actually going to have a lot of success. So I think that's a really good way of looking at it.
Got it. Yeah, I love the concept of, treating them just like a sale. And I think, as we talked about with the fight for talent, it's going to be more and more important. Have you seen somebody or an organization that has a person that treats them that way? It doesn't feel like I've come across many of those where it's like, oh, well, we took this person and almost made it like an HR sales role. Like, you're going to go out and do this for the organization and you're going to treat it like a sale. Have you seen anybody doing that?
I mean, larger Fortune companies are definitely doing recruitment marketing, and building employer brands and things like that. But I have not yet come across anyone that has that specific role in their organization. It's typically more of an internal recruiter or HR person. But it would potentially be a really good position to just make sure that the individual in that position would constantly be fueling the recruitment process and the candidate communication and making sure that they get the information that they need when they need it.
Yeah, I mean, I know during, the personality assessments and the other culture work that we do, or, the work we do around company cultures, we know that, one personality of an outside salesperson that's doing outbound calling and going out and hunting is totally different from the personalities where they're have inbound leads coming in and they need to nurture those. Right. But yeah, I haven't seen that in the marketing space where it's like, hey, this is our HR talent acquisition hunter. I mean, I've seen some of the talent acquisition titles and things like that. Right. But it never had that sales feel, where it was tied to numbers and metrics and other things that you see in a normal sales environment.
I mean, they definitely have like headcount numbers and things like that. But having the SLAs and processes set up for minimum communication and things. I mean, there are definitely organizations that do that. So I don't want to, be unfair and say that it
But it's more
exist.
The exception than the rule, you find?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the smaller the company, the less likely you are to have those types of processes in place. But the smaller the company, frankly, probably the more important that is to do, because you're selling them on, I mean, like a Fortune company, everyone knows who they are, so their brand's already established. A smaller company, you have to sell them on your company. And if you aren't selling them on your company, then you're failing at recruitment, because it's a big part of why people want to go to work for different companies. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for talking about SLAs in the hiring process. I think to end on a great note, we're going to throw this out to our viewers and listeners. If you work for and or know of a company that doesn't just have one or two talent acquisition people, but you have like an army that's run like a sales team, we would love to talk to them and hear a little bit more about that, since we've generally seen that that's the exception and not the rule. We'd love to interview them on our podcast. So send us that information. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.